Max Gorlin, Melbourne Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club.
Trent Cotchin from the Richmond Footy Club.
Scott Pendlebury from the Collingwood Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows.
This is Tom Mitchell from the Hawthorn Footy Club, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hey friends, you got MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you're well, and welcome back to another episode of the Coaches Panel. Round 3 is hours away, and my goodness me, there is a lot to talk about before we get there. Joining me on this episode, the 2020 DT champion, fellow Coaches Panel co-founder, and group agitator. Let's go with that. Yeah, it's Rids. Hello, mate. How are you?
Hey, how you going, mate?
Oh, good, mate. It's good to see you. And alongside me, as he was most of the pre-season, I've got Kane. Hello, mate.
Hello, MJ. This is the biggest round of trades I can honestly remember in all my time playing fantasy. Like, it is full. There is options everywhere. Maybe it's the trade boost. I know you want to get into that.
Yep.
It is crazy, the amount of options, the amount of things that people have going through their minds and teams. It's great for the game, honestly, MJ. There's that many choices
for the game.
It's just, who knows how it's going to go. I know there's a lot of people tossing and turning on 50-50s, and yeah, only this round will reveal it, I guess.
There's a lot that comes in this round. If you play Dream Team and Supercoach, this is the week where prices start to move. It is a 3-week pricing cycle. So if you go and check out the break-evens, which we've listed all the negative ones for you across the formats at coachespanel.tv, you can see the potential movements of some really significant price gains and some price losses. So it's where guys like Heaney and Cripps that have had blinding starts, now's the chance to get them before they move. And some premiums that have had poor starts now could be the chance to jump off before you lose some of that valuable cash. I want to talk about all those variables in a minute. Kane's already alluded to it, the trade boost in Dream Team and Supercoach, where you can have 3 trades available to yourself this week by activating one of your 5 boosts. We want to get to that. I want to talk about the difference between chasing value and chasing points. We've got some ripper break evens to get to. And then, by the way, our Patreons, who we love dearly, have submitted a bunch of questions that we want to get to. If you would love to become a Patreon supporter, all you need to do is go to coachespanel.tv. All the links, you can go and check them out there at coachespanel.tv. Multiple tiers available to you and multiple different rewards, depending on what you choose. All right. The biggest question of the week, and I put out an article earlier today at coachespanel.tv, is around what are the trade priorities that coaches are looking at? And Rids, I suppose it's hard to go really specific without knowing everybody's side, but generically, what are the big priorities coaches across the formats should be looking at this week with their trade moves?
So the first thing you want to do is you want to really fix up the mistakes, okay, that you've made. You might have made a rookie mistake. You might have made a premium mistake. You just need to fix that up before the price change. And that goes both ways. It might be a case of underestimating a premium that you think is going to be top 5 for the year, and they're about to go zoop their price. Otherwise, it might be the other way, where you've started a Cam Guthrie in DT and he's looking like the other way. So you just need to do that fix-it-up trade. Rookies obviously are absolutely imperative, okay? You need to get the right rookies to make that cash, okay? But if you've nailed 90%, I tell you what, that trade boost, and I know Kane's alluded and you've definitely want to talk about it. Wow, it opens up those options, doesn't it? Just by pulling a trade boost. And I know that it's been introduced for other reasons with, the Rona and everything else.
I love it.
But I think it absolutely opens up the strategy across the board. And it's been an absolute kick up. So we were talking about it earlier, MJ. So I'm just going to throw a quick one for you, okay? Let's just say Nick Martin, let's just look at Supercoach for now. Nick Martin, if you miss Nick Martin, okay, from round 1, you've actually got an extra week to wait.
Yeah, you can wait
to
now,
bring him in. Yeah, well, he's not going up in value because he was off last week with the Rona. So suddenly that means that if you're looking at a bit of cash generation, then you might want to explore the opportunities of a Paddy Cripps or, let's say a George Hewitt, let's say Sicily, let's say Bowie.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, you can explore. You might have missed a Sherry. You might have missed a Brody, You can actually explore that because they're going to make some serious coin this week, MJ.
There's a heap there. And Kane, I'm curious on your take because there are coaches in different positions. I know some of the most experienced coaches with this statement I'm about to make go, it's obvious the answer, but sometimes when we get ourselves locked into the 30 variables of our teams, we don't see the obvious there and we just focus on the things going wrong. So I guess my question is, if you've got a premium not performing well or a stepping stone, so guys such as Lockie Whitfield, who's been underwhelming, a good example also is that unique option in Guthrie that Rids mentioned. Maybe you've got a Caleb Sarong that hasn't gone to plan.
Dyson Heppel, MJ.
Dyson Heppel is a really nice shout too. If you've got a premium stepping stone that's not worked, what's the priority? Fix that or get the cow and keep copping the underwhelming performances? What's the priority for a coach that is in that space?
Well, I think the tricky thing about this week, MJ, is it feels like we've hit on a lot of cows collectively for the most part, right? Like a lot of people have got Juan Francis, Dacos, Ward. We know
Rochelle.
Stevens is super relevant. Rochelle is doing really well. You mentioned Sherry, Martin, Brody. Like there's a lot that people have got
in the back
right.
line, yeah.
And then on the flip side, the ones a lot of people have got wrong or haven't worked so far is Hoff, is Owens, is Mead. And they're at a really awkward price, especially if you want to go up to it. The likes of Sherry or Brody. So you're in a tricky spot. I think where a lot of people are looking, MJ, is the stepping stones they've missed on first. There's guys like McGovern. There's guys like Berry. You say miss, he's still doing well scoring-wise in Supercoach. He's still in the mid-70s. But I think there was an expectation of maybe a little bit more. Or maybe it's just because the guys that are cheap, like a Nick Martin, that people have missed, if you're getting 150K, that gets pretty enticing pretty quick. I think that's where people are starting.
Yeah.
They want a bit of cash because they want to ideally take two of these mid prices to a cow and a Heaney or a Cripps. When they're in, especially in Supercoach, when you're in that sweet 450K range, if you're getting a premium that's you intend to hold for the whole year, which I think is the expectation if you're jumping on those two guys in particular. Now you're thinking they're a top 8 mid, they're a top 6 forward. The ones that make me nervous is a McGovern to a Brody.
Yeah.
You're getting 30K, but there's every chance that McGovern matches Brody for the next 2 weeks.
He was good in the preseason. He's got the role.
It's just he's got the role. Brody's turned up. He's doing it in such low time on ground, which, depending how you look at it, is a positive or a negative. If there's an expectation it could go up, you think there could be a bigger score coming. But it's also pretty incredible to be, going at nearly 1.5 points per minute in a format like that. Like, it's more realistic to even just go at 1. Like 1 is a good ratio, and that takes him to the 60. So I worry about those type of trades. I feel like you feel safer doing the 2 mid prices to a gun and a rookie. At least you're building towards the side you want. But this is where the trade boost makes things super interesting. And I think this is where these big primos that people have started slowly, whether it is a Guthrie or a Heppel or anyone else, even guys that haven't gone that bad, when you can get 200K, 150K, and you think you might be moving to someone that's comparable, for example, Steele to a Cripps in Supercoach has been something that people are heavily considering. And when you're getting over 200K to do it, all of a sudden that McGovern does become Heaney, or that Heath Chapman becomes a James Sicily. So you can see where these combinations start getting appealing because it's sort of the natural rhythm of what your team is, isn't it? You've turned, you've gone from 1 premium to 2 in 2 trades. But obviously we know the fear if that Jack Steele does what Jack Steele does.
Yeah,
if
he goes Lockie Whitfield last week.
If a Lockie Whitfield does what we know he can do and why people started with him in the first place. That's where these trades can be disasters. And that's why I think you need to be getting multiple premiums if you're going to be making a restructuring move like that.
So it's not a, and again, this is a bit more super coach heavy, although it's very comparable in Dream Team, AFL fantasy coaches. This is some of the strategy that you can look and learn to use through there. But yeah, I agree. I wouldn't be doing a Steele down to Cripps going, I'm just going to pocket the cash. It's like, well, what are you using that for, mate? Cripps v Steele, sure. Right now, everything's been Cripps, but Steele's not been great. In Supercoach, he's still averaging 100, similar in Dream Team, and he's not been great. So I'm in that line of it's got to get you a one gun, uber premium to two guys you think are going to be in the ballpark of the top line to really make it justified.
So MJ, just before you go on, I just want to jump in as well. Like we saw a lot of noise around holding premiums and everything else, you know, and then what happened were people used one or two examples of, say, a Jaden Short or a Jack Crisp from round 2. Okay. Oh, this is why you don't trade premiums. This is why you don't trade premiums. But then in the next breath, we're seeing people go, oh, but do I trade Gorm this week?
That's
you know,
right.
And we know that's across the board. And it's like, well, you can't have it both ways. What you've got to do is, it's not just one rule applies for everything. If you're going to hold your premiums, you're going to hold your premiums. The thing is, you've just got to back that they're going to come good. And we've said this, how many times have we said this? Price doesn't matter if they drop price. It
100%.
only matters if you trade them out.
That's right.
So you're only compounding the issue, okay, by trading them out. Like that's when the price drops are going to matter. Now, the problem with this in AFL fantasy, that is, now in Supercoach and Dream Team, I think this trade boost opens up such a new variable because if your team's set up correctly, you can actually utilize all three trades to better your team. And
what do you mean by set up correctly? Because someone hears that and goes, my side's set up correctly. Talk me through what a proper structure is to really exploit this trade boost, not just I can do 3 trades.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw one example out there, and you know I've talked to death about Braden Pruce. Okay,
there he is. Put him on your bingo card, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's just use an example here, and I know Kane and I have been talking about it and everything else, so I'll do it at a very high level, and I'll do it as simple, and I won't put anyone's situation in. But if you've started a Gordon Grundy, or if you've started a Marshall and one of the Gs, and you've got Pruce at R3, and if Pruce is named this week, as we all suspect he will be, that actually opens up the opportunity to trade, say, Grundy or a Gorn to another line. Because everyone should have a Hayes in that setup as a forward rookie on the bench. So you can always swing Hayes into the R3, and then you can look at other options. Now, but if you don't have Pruce as R3, and it's always awkward when you say set up correctly, it's just it's fallen your way in this occasion, and it works itself out. But if you've trading Gorn to a Pruce, well, guess what? You don't have that direct trade to go Gorn to, let's just say Heaney in this instance, okay, who you actually absolutely want to. So this is why it's like you've got to have a look at your team. If the cards are falling your way this time, this might be the time where you go, you know what, I'm going to do that, free up a few 100,000, then I'm going to use a trade boost anyway, and I'm going to grab that rookie I missed, free up a little bit more cash, and I'm also going to go and better that team by spending that money on another line and doing an upgrade at the same time. So, and this is where it gets really, really cool. So you've turned Gorn, a mid-pricer, and 2 mid-prices into 2 real keepers for the season, and a moneymaker, if that makes sense, that you've missed.
Yeah. No,
so this is why the trade boost becomes so important.
No, I love that. That's crystal clear for coaches. Kane, a couple of guys, I think super coaches where they've always historically been good. Dream Team, though, that they're showing perfectly fine scoring, specifically Cripps and Heaney. let's help coaches identify what's the difference between chasing points, because both of those guys have been dominant, versus chasing what they've become. And do you believe they could be guys you could hold for the season? Help coaches understand the difference between points chasing versus correctional chasing.
Yeah, it's a really good question, MJ, because the hard thing about this situation is if you're trading into Heaney and Cripps, you're probably a little bit off the pace of the coaches that already have them, such as the nature of how well they've started the season. So, as we always say, only one person can win, only 1,000 coaches can be in the top 1,000. So doing the same thing as everyone else, you're not going to catch up if you're already a couple hundred points behind on those decisions alone. But the other flip side of that is when you've got players that are priced at what they're priced at in this instance, which is low 80s. And I think in Cripps's case, the expectation from mine would be 110 minimum from now on in Supercoach.
Yep.
And I think Heaney's probably 100 from here on in Supercoach, putting those scores they've done behind them, since we're not going to get them. But we are still getting that value. So I think this is a point where you don't try to go too fancy on those guys and avoid them because you've missed their hot start. I think you look at them as they're 450 odd K in a Supercoach format. They're such a cheap price. If this was round 8 and they presented themselves, and we see it, someone gets knocked out on 2 points, we wait for them to play their 2 games, they bottom out, and we all jump on. And we all jump on because it's a great deal. And I think that's what these 2 guys are. I think it's still early. Your rank might seem a long way off, but we know how congested it is at this point of the season. And it was an interesting season in that there was a lot of consensus. Like you look at the teams, MJ, how many of them are Dunkley, Heaney, Butters, Cornelio in the forward line? How many of them are, a combination of McRae, Miller, Steele, and then, a Neil or a Cripps. So, 2 decisions here can basically be the difference between it being 1,000th and being 30,000th. Like that's just how tight these formats are. So where obviously the fun's going to be is, as always, trading and managing the buy. So I think at this point of the season, I think you've got 2 guys in Cripps and Heaney that are top in their line. You're not only getting them top of their line, you're getting them at a price that's well below and allows for a lot of flexibility going forward. So I think those 2 guys, you just take them. But there is going to be a point in the season where if everyone's going one direction and you're behind, you are going to have to make that move. But I think while we're so early, you let your team run its course. You take these gifts, I would call them, and you just move on. But there will come a point where you've got to be different just to try to catch up. And you're going to have to risk going backwards. That's always the case with those type of moves. But I think for now, on those 2 specifically, they're just such a good deal. You just got to suck it up. You've missed the points.
Yeah.
But you've got a good one coming forward.
No, I want to talk Bowie, Whitfield, and also about Gawn.
Before
with you,
you
guys
do
in a
that,
second.
MJ,
Yes, please.
I do want to jump in and talk about the value and the points chasing and everything.
I was coming to you, yes.
I thought you might have, because you've heard this many, many times over the years. Don't forget, you're trading into guys. You don't trade their points that they scored last round into 100%. Your team. Okay, so someone like a Brayshaw, now he's the intriguing one across the formats, okay, Brayshaw, because I don't think anyone really would have expected him to be the, top few midfielder.
Good, but maybe
at
not
the moment.
This good. Yeah.
No, well, we would have all agreed that, natural progression says, he was always going to do an slight increase on last year.
Yeah, maybe back on the door
extra
of the top 10.
Time on ground, extra minutes. Prio's got a bit of a history of kids being slowly integrated into their system with time on ground. But you got to be relative, okay? So there's still 20 games of football. So if you look at someone, and let's just say a Brayshaw in this instance, he's now priced at whatever he was averaged anyway last year. Whatever he averages for the year this year is actually irrelevant. It's what he averages from this round to the last round. So if you still think he's going to average from round 3 to round 22 at a higher price than what he is priced at right now, that's value. If you think he's going to come out and score 180 points every single second week, then you're probably fooling yourself and you're looking at the points from last week.
100%.
Sometimes it's much easier to trade into a guy who you think's going to average 120 for the year that's currently averaging 90, because that means that you're actually bringing him in at a higher rate than 120 to get to what you think he will for the season.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's just a little bit tricky. There are always, and we've seen it year after year, there's premiums that do fall off that horse and their averages they fall off a cliff and their averages drop by 30. I mean, Lockie Hunter's probably a perfect example last year.
Yeah, 2 years ago, he was one of the best premiums, certainly in AFL Fantasy and Dream Team. And now draft coaches can't even get rid of him.
So you've got to base it on more than just what they've scored in the first 2 weeks. You've got to actually see what they've done. There might have been the way the team is playing. Is he in the centre bounce as much as what he was last year? Is he doing the role you expected? You know, there's something. Is he moving the way he was moving 3 weeks ago when you selected him? You know, they're the sort of decisions you really, really need to make. Because I can tell you now, when I looked at Jack Steele on the weekend, he was still tackling anyone in sight.
Yeah, 13 of the beasts. Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, it's just that the ball hasn't fallen into his hands and he hasn't had those 30 plus disposals yet. So there's always that flip side, you know, just because Lipinski scores 120 in round 1 doesn't mean he's going to score 120 in round 2.
No.
You know, so you've just got to watch the game, have a gut feel on it and back yourself in. But again, that's what chasing value is. Patrick Cripps is an absolute perfect example in Supercoach, radio. So he started the year at the same price he is now because the prices haven't changed. So if you still think he's going to average 110 from what you've seen, and there's no reason why he shouldn't, is that going to be enough for him to fall into an M8? If that's the case, you've got real value there.
What is that, Kane? I'm keen on your take on this. Say like a Tom Mitchell, who's got the role, and Rid's made this as like a passing point. He's got the role, but the game style of Hawthorn has evolved a little bit, and maybe that's partially to do with opponents that they've come up against as well in terms of trying to exploit that. Does a Tom Mitchell type sit into this conversation where we're looking at a Whitfield and a Gawn, where they've been okay but not been disastrous? Does a Titch need to be in that same level of conversation of moving him on now while you can?
Absolutely, MJ. I think those are the ones that make it a lot easier. You know, in his case, he's had an interrupted preseason. You know, he's missed a practice game. You got a new coach. They're playing winning footy, and they're really spreading the load. They're not. God, you look at the numbers. If you didn't know the score from Saturday night and you saw just fan footy, you would think Port won by 10 goals. But it was actually the other way around. You know, Port had all the fantasy numbers, but Hawthorn, you know, did what their job is. They won the football game comfortably.
Win the game.
They were so efficient. So absolutely, that's part of it. They've got an even spread. Again, at that club, there seems to be a lot of youth getting great opportunities. You know, Tom Mitchell's not getting 85, 90% CBAs. You know, guys like Ward and Newcomb, McDonald, you know, they're dropping guys like Shields who've, you know, been great servants of the club. So there's clearly a plan there. And I think in Tom Mitchell's case, it's a lot easier than a Jack Steele. You know, Jack Steele you think is going to be an absolute top dog. So you're always scared of what he could do to you the next week. He could put out a 150. I think in Tom Mitchell's case, it's a lot easier because you're going down to a Cripps. You're telling yourself you're getting multiple premiums. You're getting rid of that mid-price you took a flyer on. I think game style is the one thing we do have to be interested in. I think the other thing that we have to think of is we know as we get into winter, who are those players that often come home big? Jack Steele came home massive last year. JPK, how many times did it get to post by? Yeah. The weather gets tough.
Joel Selwood
gets wet.
Guys.
You have to think about that. Think about last year. Who was the person flying out of the gate? Brandon Ellis.
Yeah.
Who was the guys in the past? Brad Ebert. These guys, hard runners. They get those massive mark totals.
Yeah.
Now, that can be a concern when you think about a Lockie Whitfield because this is the type of year you'd hope he would be flying. But you've got to start thinking there is some types that for whatever reason, start better, or maybe they've just had those sort of poor scores. For me, it's not so much about who you're trading out. It's more the excitement of what you're getting in. Like if you think Heaney and Cripps are as good as maybe I think they are in especially Supercoach formats. And again, obviously we're going to focus on these formats because it's a bigger week in Supercoach and DT than it is in AF. We know that's just the case. This is the biggest week of the year in DT and Supercoach, in particular Supercoach, with the way the scoring sort of spread. So I think that's definitely one you consider. But again, you come to game style for the two rucks. It's not a chipmunk game at Collingwood anymore. It's a fun, free-flowing footy. And who's doing well? A lot of these defenders and a lot of these forwards and guys that get a bit of split time. It's not really going through the wings. It's going down the middle. And, Grundy's done a good job of putting Supercoach points comparative to DT. We know Gawn's got a bit of a ruck share. We don't know what Marshall's about to go into if Ryder does or doesn't return. We saw Hayes get more opportunity in the ruck last week, and the Saints won. So it's a big, big melting pot. And that's where I think you're not so much, you have to cull someone, MJ. If at this point of the season, cash has not moved. So everyone's got the same total cash to spend. What I think you're more excited about is what you think you're bringing in. You're going to have to cull a big dog to create this cash. You're not just plucking money out of nowhere to take a mid-pricer up. Someone has to go. And it's easier for it to be someone who's got a big break even. Because if they do have another quiet one, you could be looking at getting them back in 2 or 3 weeks. And you've made maybe 200K in the move. Maybe you've gone to a bow. He makes his quick 120, 130K. Maybe Gawn drops it. You time it right with a will. You can see how these things move really quick. And all of a sudden, someone's an extra premium ahead of you. That's what makes this week so complicated. Is you're managing rookies. You're managing these premiums that are cheap that you think can be season-long keepers. And then how do you fit in stepping stones? And what role do they have in your team?
And there's one more variable when you're trading out a premium, MJ, that people don't really take into consideration enough.
Yep.
And that's ownership. Okay.
Yeah, true.
It's always harder to trade a premium that's heavily owned by the majority of the comp. Because what happens is if they do fly, it's going to hurt you by not having them.
Yeah,
so
100%.
So it's a lot easier to have that decision if you own a Mitch Duncan this week and you just weren't happy how he performed last week because he's got such low ownership across the formats. So it's a much easier to trade that guy. It's much easier to trade Cam Guthrie in Dream Team. These guys that have got low ownership. Someone like a Gawn who's on 50+% ownership across the board. And we all have history.
Whitfield,
that's when it becomes really tough decision. Do I go against the grain? Now, if you get that right, you're also going against the majority of the format, and your ranking soars. Okay, you
straight
get
away.
1 or 2 of these straight right, and you just go through the roof. And these are the ones where you have to absolutely back yourself in. And guess what? They fail 3 times out of 4, but it's that 4th occasion where you really make up that ground.
And I think it's coaches that get aggressive at this point in time of the season. This is where the dividends will come for you. So 12 months ago, it was jumping on a Taylor Walker from a break-even perspective. It was seeing the role change for an Aaron Hall, albeit a few.
MJ, think about
weeks
Neil
into
last
the year.
year.
Neil, another example.
If you didn't trade after round 2, again, for various reasons, it was a disaster. It was
100%.
an absolute disaster. At the price he was at, and then we know what injury came after that, it was a horrendous call. If you were aggressive enough and you backed, not that we have clear injuries, we don't think with any of the guys we've mentioned about trading out, but what if Gawn drops another 90? Like, then what are you doing? Well, you've locked it in. You're not going to move, are you?
Then you are
probably drop 70 or 80K. And that's why this gets so interesting is all of a sudden this cash in your team can change so quickly that if you get that move right, like Reed said, all of a sudden you're an extra premium up.
And I'm going
And
to throw
sometimes you
another
can be
name.
too. Yeah.
Think of Tom Phillips last year. Think of
another
Mhm.
perfect example.
how many people, and he didn't
Held
destroy
and
your
held and
season,
held and
okay?
held.
But you held because he just wasn't worth, cashing
Yep.
in. And you think
Close
about
enough to
AFL
keep,
fantasy.
bad enough to know. Yeah.
Well, you think about fantasies, particularly, you start burning that cash in the first 3 or 4 weeks, and then you go, you know what, he's just not any value to trade. Guess what? The guy that did still trade him is making 20, 30 points more than you based
Plus
on that
cash.
trade.
Yeah.
So it's that important at this time of the year, but more particularly for DT and Supercoach. You get this week right, you set yourself up for a good year
You're
across
away.
the board.
Yeah. It does
If you
feel
get
it's
this
the
right-
week to do it.
Yeah, but if you get it wrong, MJ, guess what? You've still got time to get it right next week. And with this
100%.
trade boost,
You can
if
really make up ground.
you can make up a lot of red ground, You can make up a lot of ground quickly, I believe. So,
And you're going to have
yeah.
to live with it, MJ, aren't you? You're going to have to watch if you move on Gorn, you have to know that there is a chance he goes
What's the risk here?
170. Yeah, and you have to factor that into, as I said, if you're doing Gorn and a rookie or a mid-price at a Cripps and Heaney, you're going to have to know what the possible outcome of that could be. Because that mid-price, that Mitch McGovern, he could go 110 with Gorn's 170. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, this isn't worked out great. But on the flip side, it could go your way. You've just got to, as Reed said, back it in.
Yep.
Think of a few options. Think of some backup plans. I think a big factor this year is we have good cows. We have really good cows that I think are going to be making 250K plus.
Really good money. Yeah.
Now you think about how many trade. We've already got more trades. We've got more trades and we've got more trade boost. We've got trade boost. So you know how many weeks you're like, I can't get all these cows. Well, you're going to have that ability now to even inject more cash into your team, to time your upgrades even more. Get that. How many times do we have 3 premiums that we want? We've only got 2 trades.
Correct.
There's a lot of options now. So I think you can push the envelope a little bit more because I think you're going to save trades just by the value that these cows are going to make. Like if cows are getting to 400K plus in Supercoach or, 500K plus in AFL fantasy.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's not your 150K, 150K.
No.
You might save 2 or 3 trades just by how much these guys have made. You might better ride them all the way to the buy. Like, I think aggression, I feel like personally, when I've played that type of way, you don't really regret that much. What you do regret is you get to the end of the season and you're like, I've got trades left, and you're trying to pick a lottery out of, do I sideways my premium to this person or another person? And you're making maybe 20 points a week for 4 weeks. You make the right move now.
That's right.
Hey, if you've got, if you do have Bruce and you've got Hayes in the forward line and you go, you know what, Gorn doesn't smell right.
I'm getting 2 premiums out of this.
You know what I'm doing? Yeah. I'm actually just going to go to Christian Petrarca, or I'm going to go to Andy Brayshaw.
Yeah.
I'm going to take my 70K. It lets me do something else.
Yep.
And I just think there's enough points that, I think they're 125 guys, and I think Gorn's a 110. Do it.
Sure.
Be on your way, because if you get that right, 10 points a week for 20 weeks.
You're looking like a genius. I think the other factor,
it's cheaper. So it's so many options, MJ. If you make a call early, it's got a lot of time to pay off.
Yeah.
MJ,
and Dream Team. Yeah, go.
There's one other part as well. Don't do it because you got by a regret. Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Don't go, know what? I underestimated the 26-year-old mature age rookie for St Kilda was going to come out and outscore Gorn in the first 2 rounds to go.
Yeah.
No one's going to predict that yet.
No.
But what you could have predicted was he was picked on merit, was Jack Hayes. Okay?
Yeah, and he was a scorer in the Sandford.
He definitely was a scorer. He's got history. He's actually a very, very viable rookie on-field option from day one. So if that's the case and you've got someone like that, you can actually be a little bit more risky when you've got 2 positions on ground. But don't go, you know what? I started Gorn, so I'm going to have buyer's regret now. I shouldn't have started Gorn. I've got 100,000 guy over here that's outscored Gorn by 7 points a round. Guess what? That's stupid, right? Actually make it turn it into a situation where you can reallocate that coin that you got in the rucks and utilize it somewhere like Kane just said to a Petrarca where it's no risk. And I'm
100%.
I don't know how many times I've said this to you over the preseason and the years.
Yeah.
Why is everyone in the world saying, is someone so cheap risky? Are they a trap? That should never be in the same conversation.
No.
Because they're low priced, it means that your expectation of score on field is low.
Yeah.
Like, that's just the way it is. You're spending money on the premiums to get that outcome. They're the risky selections, not the guys that are rookie priced.
Yeah, I think that's good. And remember, for Dream Teamers and Super Coaches, you've got another new element this year that AFL fantasy coaches have got used to, which is you have dual position players being added into the game. So before round 6, so at the conclusion of round 5, before round 12, and before round 18. So you will get, to Kane's point, these cows that you can move. You will get Dacos in your back line. You will get Cherry in your ruck line. You will more than likely get a Horn Francis into your forward line. So it's great coaches look a month ahead to their moves. So going with these trades that you're making, going, okay, I'm also going to get this here, this here, this here. Okay, so now the depth you might be building in a certain line will open up and free more opportunities. And these are all the elements that you're factoring into these moves and trades through the year, Kane.
Yeah, that's the other thing, MJ. You got to be careful in this period. I will say is, how confident are you? Are you just getting a premium for premium's sake, or what is your expectation? Because especially in DT and Supercoach, it's a long year. You know, forcing that upgrade because you've just got enough cash to get that mid-pricer to a premium.
Yeah,
it might sound good in theory, but sometimes even 2 weeks of patience and even just, it might not sound like much, but even 80K cash generation by that mid-pricer and an 80K drop of a premium, all of a sudden, you know, just say you've got a mid-pricer going at 50 and you think, if I go to this person, they'll go at, you know, let's just say 90 for sake of argument. You know,
pick a number.
But if you wait 2 weeks, that mid-pricer goes up a little bit, maybe a defender drops down, say a Tom Stewart in DT who started a bit slower than usual. All of a sudden, you know, you can unlock a 95 guy.
Yeah.
Well, that 80 points, that 80 points you were ahead for 2 weeks. Over the course of the remaining 18, 19 rounds, that bigger dog premium chases that down in a heartbeat.
Straight away.
So that's the thing. And people do talk about, you want to make sure, and this is why people are fixated on who is the top in the line. Because while value is important, and I think what people need to understand is value is different when you're picking your starting squad than it is in trading in the season. It's a very, very different thing. Good. Because again, it sounds great. Oh, I've got another premium. Who's the premium? Oh, it's Dan Houston. And you go, okay, that's good. You know, he might be a 90 guy in DT, maybe a 95. But maybe that person waited a week and they had the cash and they got Jake Lloyd and he's gone 105.
Yeah.
He said, you don't want to trade Houston. You just said he's a premium. You want to keep him for the year. You know, you've got him 2 weeks before, you know, you had your Ed Richards on the field or your Heath Chapman. And you're like, oh, this sucks. I can't watch Chapman get a 50 or 60. But sometimes that little bit of patience unlocks that real top defender or top premium in a line. And again, that 80 points you lost in the 2 weeks where you had to play Chapman, that big dog chases down. So
straight away.
Don't just say it's premium and it's an open, you know, class of a premium. Like, make sure you think that long term, if this is a premium, you know, my intention for that is you are keeping them for the rest of the year. So what do you think they're going to average? And is that enough? You know, is it better to wait, maybe have to make another trade and get to Aaron Hall? Like Aaron Hall versus Dan Houston, that could be 20 a week. You might be 120 up getting it early, but is he going to chase that down over giving him 15 rounds? So just be careful with that. Don't just think I've got enough cash, I'll get any premium. Again, the example this week, you know, is Jake Bowie. I think the key with Bowie is when you're doing these restructure moves, again, it's all well and good to say you're going to trade Gawn or Steele. They've got a big price tag on their head. say it's just 650K for sake of argument. 650K plus 2 mid prices at 250, and you want 3 premiums, that does not go very far. The reason it's nice with Heaney and Cripps is, they're barely 900K between them. But that's still not going to get you another premium, isn't it? Like, you're not going to be able to take Gawn and a couple of mid prices and make
100%.
3, unless you've got a crystal ball and you know who that 320K player is that is going to average 105 from now on. I'm sure there'll be someone that's not even on our radar. You don't want to just settle for that. And that's where I think, in particular with his big score, Bowie's interesting to people. Is there's this mythical situation where maybe he just keeps going. Maybe he goes at 95 at this price and gets to really good heights. Maybe he struggles and he makes 80K, 60K. That's not great. It wouldn't be probably classified as a win. You'd be disappointed, but it's a quick 60, and it could be a quick 60 drop on the top end. And you've got that cash sitting in bank. And as I said, maybe you don't get Hayden Young. Maybe you actually get up to, as I said, Tom Stewart. Maybe you get up to Jaden Short or Jordan Ridley.
Yeah.
So don't just go, I've just got to spend it all because I want a premium. Make sure you've got that expectation, because as I said, that 30 or 40 points a week sounds really good over 2 weeks. As I said, if you've capped your scoring with a guy that's not a top tier guy, those top tier guys, especially in the mids, MJ. If you miss on a mid in Supercoach in particular, where these guys can go 130, they chase that down quick smart. So just be careful with that. Make sure it fits. And if you have to use a stepping stone, I think Bowie is that one that people are gravitating towards. Sherry's probably the other, in the other end of the ground at his price. It's quick cash. And quick cash can be more important than more cash, especially when you want to get to upgrades. So put that in the melting pot. And that's why it is such a complicated round. And I think the trade boost helps experienced coaches.
It does.
They're not going to make a move that's just, I've got a premium. It's Hayden Young. Maybe he'll be good. I hope he's good. Could just be solid. Like, understand how you're going to use those type of guys.
And don't forget, it's not a one round, one score result that dictates if that trade wins or not. How many times have we seen it on Twitter when some circumstance happens where someone gave some advice to hold that premium or to trade that premium or whatever else? Then the next round they come out, and as long as that score falls into that narrative of whatever that advice was, people go, I told you not to trade your premiums and to back them in and everything else. But what about next week? And who did you trade in? So if you had a Jack Crisp last week and you went, you know what? I'm not confident Jack Crisp is in the top 5. I'm just going to trade him, get him out of my team. I've seen enough to say he's going to have his good scores and his bad scores. I'm just going to go to Aaron Hall, who I'm confident is the number 1 defender in the comp. Guess what? It doesn't matter that Hall scored 90 and Crisp scored 120 the next game. It matters what Crisp scores for the remainder of the year and Hall scores for the remainder of the year and how many trades you got. So again, it's very, very critical not to overanalyze one score.
Yeah, I think that's some really good advice. Go, Kane. Loop us up at the end here, man.
The other thing I was going to say on that, MJ, is, as you would know, is how important is restructuring this time of year?
Yeah, good.
In the forward, I know personally, I'm playing some premium forwards in the midfield because Sherry's going so well and Brody's going so well and Hayes is an option and Rochelle is an option and we've got Nick Martin this week. Like, you're trying to restructure. So there might be a reason that, mate, I moved on Gawn because I wanted to get, Hayes on the field. I wanted to get Martin on the field. I didn't want to have to play, a rookie somewhere else. So that's another element that people are going to make these moves, and it has so many different implications. I didn't want to play, Skinner on field in defence or have to worry about having, McCartan on the field in DT. Like, have some flexibility where they go, you know what? I want the back premium instead of the forward, so I can swing this all around and maximize scoring with the cows. So that's why it's so fascinating, because people are going to be doing things for different reasons. You might think,
that's true.
That makes no sense. I would never do that in my team. Yeah, but in their team, they've got this piece
It
that you
makes
don't
sense
have,
for them.
that has
Yeah.
that flexibility. So, yeah, really interesting round.
Oh, I really like that. Rids, you put it on the agenda for us for the run sheet to make sure we get to, and I want to make sure we get to it. Lockie Whitfield, it kind of comes back to that point Kane made maybe about 15, 20 minutes ago about it's at the start of this year. Sometimes these outside players dominate early. When you think of outside players, Lockie Whitfield is probably one of the first names that comes to mind. And yet, for multiple reasons, he has not started the year the way coaches had expected. Is this the example to back in the premium because the role is there, albeit the scoring is not? Or is this the critical time to make the maneuvers that we've heard Kane allude to open up other lines? Where are you at with Lockie Whitfield, specifically in Supercoach, but then more generically across fantasy footy in general?
So there's a couple of things to this, and this is why I wanted to throw it on the agenda. So Lockie Whitfield, okay, if you took it as a one-off example of Lockie Whitfield, I think the way that the game is played at the moment, and I've watched Whitfield a bit, he had that little bit of a knock at the end of the first round. He looked a little bit sore on the weekend. He didn't have his outside run that we used to have, but I really worry that this is the time of year that I expect Lockie Whitfield to average 100 until it gets heavy and contested and everything else. But I just don't know whether the style of footy has suited his role to be outside. Now, there's always examples of outside players who seem to still be able to just get that score when you need it. Jake Lloyd's probably the most obvious guy across the board.
Yeah, perfect example.
Whether it's raining, whether it's his tag, he just seems to get the job done. You know what I mean? But Whitfield, and I don't know whether anyone else noticed, but he didn't seem to be playing on from the kick-ins. He didn't seem... I don't know whether he got disinterested or...
Yeah, and Cumming and Perryman were almost the priority options when they did have that chance to play possession footy.
And there was often, and I watched it on the weekend, and because obviously they played Richmond, so I watched this game reasonably close, because I was expecting Whitfield to have one of those 120 games and be the one that bounces and his score looks massive. But I got really, really concerned about Lockie Whitfield. So this might be a perfect time if Lockie Whitfield becomes a Jake Bowie, okay, in Supercoach or Dream Team. That frees up, the better part of 300,000-400,000, which you can utilise. And it doesn't take much to turn a Berry into a Cripps in that instance.
No.
So what I would suggest to people is, instead of going, I hate the way that, stop focusing on one premium. Have a look at your whole team. How's the team
combination
going? Now, who's the best person in your team that you can actually maneuver and restructure? I call it reallocation of money, okay, across different lines in the team. I don't think restructure is really correct, because we're not going, we're only going to play 5 forwards this week and 7, defenders, because that's better. What we're actually doing is we're just reallocating the money across the board, because there might be someone that jumps out. Maybe someone went, Will Brodie's got a history of showing us heaps in the preseason. We just didn't think he was going to be as good as he was with that low time. And now that 5, who was meant to play round 1, was meant to play round 2, now he's not. They're talking about 4 or 5 weeks off now, back operation. So there is a role there for Brodie. Maybe he didn't know that, Fife was going to miss the better part of this first 6 weeks of the year. So that becomes that Brodie might be someone you've missed in that aspect. You didn't believe Tristan Sherry was going to be the number 1 ruck for as much as what he was, because Coleman Jones was in the team and Goldstein was in the team.
Yeah.
It's these sort of types. Now, but it might actually be, you got Gawn and Whitfield in the team, but you're more comfortable moving on Whitfield because nothing that you've seen out of Whitfield is actually giving you any confidence. And plus, there's an absolute guy, 400K cheaper, that's jumping off the screen at you going, pick me. I'm a guy who's played 9 games. I'm a kid. but I've got super talent and I'm going to make you a lot of money quickly in 2 or 3 weeks. And there's every chance that this guy doesn't just stall after 2 weeks, that he actually flies, and he might be up to round 14 buy option. You just don't know how this works out, So he might be the better one, because there might not be anyone in your ruck lines that you'd want to take Gawn down and have confidence around that. So that's why I want to talk about Whitfield, because sometimes he might be going, I've got 2 or 3 of these guys that are underperforming. Who's the best one to move on out of them? Who do I have the most confidence that's going to bounce back? Because I can tell you now, and Kane's probably watched the footy games for Melbourne as much as anyone, Max Gawn is still looking like Max Gawn in those games.
Yep,
I wouldn't be trading him for any other reason than Jackson is going to impact, or there's something that you've noticed that didn't really fill it. I wouldn't be trading him based off his score at this stage, but there's many ways to do it. If there's a better reallocation and you like a better, cheaper option, or if your structure allows you to have a Bruce, who may very well be named this week, come onto the ground and you're pretty much confident that he's an 80 ruck, if in the right, role, then you can allocate that coin onto another line, get another premium in, and it might be Petrarca, And we'd all, are we really expecting Petrarca not to average 120 at the very least across the formats this year? He is clearly the best player in the league right now.
Yes.
But what happens there is, we often then bypass the guy that we should be selecting because we've got the blinkers on for Petrarca. Now, I would argue that Clary Oliver might be the guy that you should be bringing in, not Christian Petrarca.
I think so.
I
think Clary's the guy, yeah.
That's exactly right. So it's like sometimes you can even pick another guy who's comparable to the guy that everyone else is bringing in. And it's a real point of difference. It's not just a point of difference to be unique.
No, I think that's some really nice stuff that you lads have really unpacked for people to help them process through. I want to get to some of our Patreon questions as we look to wrap up this episode. On the vein of that, Ian's asked a question in Supercoach, Kane. It kind of bounces perfectly off what Rids has said. He said, in Supercoach, is a Whitfield to Bowie and a Baldwin to Cripps the type of solid move he should be considering this week? Again, we don't know the other 28 variables, but Whitfield to Bowie, Baldwin to Cripps. What's your take?
Probably, yeah. I'd love to see if you have a mid-pricer. If you don't have a mid-pricer, I just hate moving on those cows, MJ, when they're bottom price, especially someone like Baldwin who went straight back to the VFL and actually looked all right.
Yes.
That's my hesitation. I'd rather, especially with how loaded our benches are, take advantage of him as a loophole. I know he's on Friday this week if he plays at all or if he doesn't play.
Sure.
But same goes for Hoff, same goes for Owens. Is that really the priority? They can come in at any time and get their cash going again. How many times have people jumped off early only for them to come back? So I'd want to be maximizing someone that's got some value on their head. But I get the move. You go into Bowie, who's, again, at minimum, probably a quick 100K. We think Cripps is comfortably outscoring Whitfield. I will say, think about how heated round one was for the Giants versus the Swans. Conditions, all that stuff, that might as well have been in July. That was not a Whitfield day. That had some serious.
It was a very
heat
narrow
in that game.
Yeah.
And again, just to backtrack on Whitfield, he had 88 DT against the Tigers. So not great, I know, by what you want. But he's also not that far off what he's priced in DT. And that is a disappointing Supercoach score to get it into the 70s. But he had some horrible kicks. He's a great kick. If he converts a few of those to targets or even scoring chains, that's a ton. So for me, I don't see the massive priority. He's not at top dollar.
Yep.
But I get the move. Cripps, yes, you probably think you need to have him. You've got someone who's going to generate cash and quick cash. And we don't know if Baldwin's in the team. So totally get it.
Yeah. Dream team question for you. Rids Phelan has a question. Is a Zach Merritt owner? And obviously with him being out for 6 to 8 weeks, that's a clear trade. Should Phelan be looking to go to the Took and the Brayshaw style player? or should they be getting a little bit more value and chasing after Cripps or Neil? Help feeling out, mate. What should he be doing?
For a start, can I just quickly say, I think Took and Brayshaw shouldn't be combined into the one. Okay. Took for me is an absolute captain option week in, week out.
Every week, agree.
Brayshaw at the moment has had a nice run where he hasn't been tagged, but he's the only Freo player that keeps them in the game week in, week out.
Correct.
He's also has a history of being taggable. So
Yes,
he's flown. Yes, he's a great kid. He's a great runner. Everything else, I like the guy. I've owned him before. Reckon he's a great pickup. I don't think those two should be matched up.
He doesn't play early in the round often either, MJ. Like, that's the risk with Brayshaw. You'd love to throw a VC on him, but they often play so late in the round. You don't even get that.
Correct. The Sunday afternoon saviour. Yeah.
Like, you are a free chance, and with the attention he's got, and as Rid said, he is a soul hand.
All right. Well, Phelan, I reckon it sounds like Took's the guy.
Go Miller. But I'm just saying, generally with Brayshaw, that is the concern. Is like you can't even. Well, I could have massive confidence. Especially when you've got big dogs like Miller, like Neil, like McRae in those formats.
Correct.
Like you want a VC, like you want him to. That was the beauty of McRae, is he pretty much plays the first game every week.
He's the VC every
week. Whereas
yeah.
Brayshaw's, he's Saturday night's pretty much the earliest he's playing.
And that's the thing. So if you're going to go up, you've got to go to Took. Okay,
go to the top.
You go to the top. You go to a captain option. If you're going to go down, then that's only to reallocate those funds on another line and get someone else. Okay. Now, I wouldn't be going down to, let's face it, he's flying. There's no doubt about it, okay, Paddy Cripps, absolutely flying. But I would rather spend 100,000 and go Lockie Neal, who's done it before. And
in DT, yeah.
And there's enough there around Lockie Neal at the moment. And again, he's flying too, obviously. But there's enough there to suggest that his time on ground is enormous right now. He has to be the fittest I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like for him to be playing, we're talking about a guy who was like in the 70s. And he's in the 90s right now, MJ.
Yeah, it's insane what he's doing. And he was a 105 guy, like 105 guy in that mid-70s time on ground.
But
if he's pushing the 90s...
He didn't come off until the second quarter.
Yeah,
and I remember when he was still at Fremantle, and we had a discussion saying, if this guy ever gets his time on ground up to 90%...
He'll be a beast.
He's going 115, 120, you know? But that's what we're seeing right now. So there's real trends. And I know it's only small data sample and everything else, but the fact is it's there. They wouldn't be throwing him in 90+% now. They would have been easing him into the season if there was any question at all. So, he's the guy that jumps off the page to me is Lockie Neal, only because of that. Paddy Cripps, I don't know. There's still question marks around Adam Chera, how he fits
in DT. I don't know if I can do that. I agree.
Yeah, I just don't.
Supercoach is different, but not DT.
Would you if they had to trade to a dead cow or a cow rids that's basement to make that happen? Would you do it?
Potentially.
Yeah, I think so too. You have to think about it.
Potentially, because
that's all
the
those
fact
variables
is,
kick.
That's exactly right. But at the end of the day, you still got to score points.
Yeah, that's it too.
Well, you'd argue the loophole might allow you to do that. If you got a DPP cow,
Elijah Holmes type.
Well, it could even be someone you have no intention of
ever playing.
Real basement, yeah.
And MJ, we've had chats, okay, and you know my views. DT it's getting more and more aligned to AF at the moment. Supercoach sort of always has that different dynamic because of the different scoring and everything else. Whereas DT and AF has always been sort of aligned, one hand, like because of the scoring, because of this, because of that. It's pretty much the same thing now without the price change in, after one
That's pretty much the difference now, isn't it? Yeah.
So I actually think what will happen is the more senior, more serious DT coach, with all this strategy that they've picked up with loophole options and this and that and points, is going to start sliding into AF now. And you're going to see a lot more strategy being applied into AF. And I've made the comment myself, like I've been more focused on AF this year than I have previously. And like, I mean, I've already noticed some of the crazy trends that happen in the pre-season, 30 green dots. I've never heard this in my life, MJ, because I've been always super coach and DT. And the first thing we always say is, which position are we going to burn to have the loophole available?
Yeah, leverage a loophole. Yeah.
You know, yeah, in AF, it's like they're sort of a little bit slow to the party, and they're like 30, got to make money, get even slow burns. And it's like, and I know we've been doing this for a while now, but in Dream Team, we used to have slow burns, and we used to sit there, and Kane was 100% correct with what he said before. How many times have we just sat on a guy and it's a basement rookie, and then suddenly he appears in round 7, 8, and he starts making that coin because he's playing football. You know, I remember Dunkley did that. Was it Dunkley?
In his debut season in 16, yeah.
You know, he sort of came, played
disappeared
a game,
on the bubble,
came back, and it's like, well, you're wasting a trade to move him. But in AF, from what I've noticed in my limited time playing seriously, it's sort of like people are encouraged to make those little sideway trade just to have a heartbeat. But you get stuck with a Sam Skinner type who sits there and he doesn't make money, tops. And he gives you 20 or 30 points when you do require him on the field. And that's the worry. So you're going to see a lot more strategy being injected into AF when the DT sort of slides over in that.
Yeah, when coaches with that. All right, fair enough. A super coach question for you, Kane. Jack wants to know, we've talked about Patrick Cripps a lot. He's looking at using his third trade, so that boost of Ward up to a Cripper. So genuine cow up to this kind of mid-price guy. He's feeling like they might, you know, he's looking at it as the cash move, that they'll make a similar amount of cash.
No, MJ, no, I got to stop.
There we go, Jack.
You're not worried about cash if it's Cripps. Like if you want Cripps, that's the keeper for the year. I would not be trading Ward. A few little things in that game on the weekend, that's 100. Yeah. Look at the DT, look at his Supercoach score, 30-point discrepancy. Do not be surprised the next week if it's 30 the other way.
Correct.
I would not be trading him. There must be someone else. Like,
yep.
I don't know who you've got in your team. You've probably got Whitfield. You've probably got a Gorn or a Grundy. I can't see Ward. Like, you're spending 200K. 70K. I don't know where you're getting that from. And honestly, if you're in such a good position that you're thinking about Ward up to Cripps, you might have actually just letting Cripps go. Like, I just don't actually see how that. I don't know how you get the cash. I just think if you're doing that and you love Cripps that much, you're dropping
another way to get there.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, that's where the Whitfield-esque moves comes. Yeah.
And MJ, this is just on these cows, and I'm going to pull up a name that's an absolute gun now in Tuke Miller.
Yeah. And
remind people of his debut season, because people probably haven't played this game as long as us, but this was Tuke Miller's first 2 games. He averaged 43 with scores of 44 and 42 in DT, and in Supercoach he averaged 33. I bring this up because the next 2 scores across the formats was 94 and 84 in DT, 86 and 83 in Supercoach, a 99 in Supercoach. For the next 5 games, he didn't drop below 82 in Supercoach. So you wouldn't believe it, but sometimes cows improve, and there is nothing more painful than moving on these cows for $0 gained after 2 weeks, for them to go and make 250K plus, be fieldable, and the premium you trade into, who, as always, has a hot start, which is why you've gone to them, come back to her. So there has to be someone else. Send us your team. I'll find someone else for you. Do not trade Ward. I cannot, MJ, see a circumstance where trading Ward is appropriate.
Yeah, 100%.
I cannot see it.
Just on Ward, he's got the round 14 bye. He's one of the rookies with the best job securities. He's showing plenty. Now, he's got some very friendly matchups, okay, between now and his 14 bye.
He does.
His round 14 bye. He's got St Kilda. He's got Melbourne, who's given up points for mids at the moment. He's got Essendon. He's got Richmond. He's got Gold Coast. He's got Collingwood. And he's got Fremantle. Now,
And he's got centre bounces.
That's it.
And he's gone up centre bounce last week. Like, I think it was 15 last week.
Yeah.
And everything's pointing in the right direction, isn't it? It's just
There's just got to be someone else, Rids. There's got to be someone else.
100%. You've got to find another way. Rather in the 29 other guys you've got.
And you shouldn't be considering Cripps if you're thinking about getting the value for Cripps. Because if Cripps goes up 150K, he's 600K, so he's averaging 120. Like, there's
if it's Ward as his biggest problem, his team, he must be ranked number one.
You're doing well, Jack. If Ward's your biggest problem.
Don't trade. You'll be laughing in a few weeks when this upgrade starts. If you've got Ward, there must be someone else. I'd actually love to see who else there is.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Send us a message, Jack. We'll help you out. Supercoach question from Nathan for you, Rids. Is Luke Jackson a viable option to bring in for McGovern, or is it better to look at these cheaper options that Kane's already alluded to? So players like a Cherry, a Brody. I think most people have a Cornelio, so let's not mention him. So, Rids, is Luke Jackson a viable Supercoach play?
Listen, they're not even close to the same price range. Like, that's like me comparing Tuke Miller to like Josh Ward. Like, I mean, it's nearly double the price, isn't he?
Yeah,
like,
they're very
Jackson's
different.
390,000, and he's a forward ruck. Now, my question would back to whoever that was. Sorry, I don't know his name. Nathan is Luke Jackson a stepping stone? Or is he going to be a season-long keeper? Is he going to be your R3 cover through the buys for someone who's at R1 or R2 that's got a buy that's not round the same buy that's...
Well, most of them have the 14.
Yeah, which is the issue, isn't it?
They're all
that's
in
half
there.
the issue, yeah? Like, I mean...
Even Cherry.
Why? And let's think about it. Now, if he said to me, McGovern and Cherry, right, that's like, okay.
Different conversation.
I understand that. But, like, is Jackson viable? 100% he's viable. That kid's a stud.
He's a beast.
But I mean, this is why McGorn discussion's rife right now. It's so hot, is because Luke Jackson's a gun. If Luke Jackson was fake, there would be no Gorn discussion right now. So, so I 100% viable. I don't think, like, isn't it the same thing as the Gorn discussion we're having right now? Is Gorn going to have 50% or is Gorn going to have 70%? If you think Gorn's going to have 70%, that means Jackson's only going to have 30.
Correct. And he's scoring.
If you're more Jackson's going to be 50, then maybe he is a decent
And that's the issue, isn't it, Rids, with a 2-game sample size is they've already come out and said it's matchup dependent. Whatever they think, whoever they think the matchup is, with how mobile those guys are and how athletic they are, they're just going to play forward, ruck, whatever they think they can exploit the opposition better.
Correct.
And think about this. Not many teams have 2 rucks. Like, Bulldogs are going with Mitch Hannon as their second ruck. Sammy Draper,
Tom Green.
Tom Green. Dunkley's been even Friday night. It's Draper and Peter Wright. Essendon don't want Peter Wright in the centre bounce.
Yeah, you think
he's their full forward.
Gold Coast played Melbourne last weekend, okay. Now, Witts is actually able to man up on Gorn and play that role well. But have a look for Jackson. Jackson's mobile. He's like another midfielder in there. Witts just went, you know what? I'm just going to let you go. And Witts, that's
21 and 2 goals.
Yeah, well, Witts actually was able to get a decent score across the board was because he wasn't actually manning up on someone. He just played like he did. Like, because Jackson caused havoc. He was easily, he was as good as anyone on that ground. He was the best big man on that ground by a long distance.
By a long way.
They don't play Gold Coast every week, MJ.
And I think that's the factor too, isn't it? Is we so often make that assumption, poorly.
And then we're also the reason as well. I think people are attracted to not only moving going on for the cash is we have no ruck clarity. Like, we've lost Darcy, who I think everyone says if Darcy plays 22, of course we all start with him. Like,
Sure.
whatever he does, the secret source of his game is Supercoach. Like, he can have 40 and give you a 120, like from
Yeah.
DT to Supercoach.
Yeah, it's huge.
We don't have confidence in Marshall. Now, there was great news about English today. If you're on English and you hear what Luke Beveridge says about,
You'd have some
we don't want to go
optimism,
back
yeah.
to Steph Martin.
Yeah.
Now, you want to trade him in at that price tag? Now he's got ruck forward status, but that could change in a way. Like, there is no clarity. So,
I heard that comment today, and I was a little bit intrigued, okay? They don't want to go back to Steph Martin. But guess who gets named as an emergency? Jordan Sweet.
Sweet.
So maybe Beveridge is playing a trick and going, well, you know what? We don't want to go back to Steph Martin, but we're very interested in going to Jordan Sweet. So you just don't know these games that these coaches play.
Yeah.
But that's why I think, Rids, people go, if I can buy time with a Bruce or a Hayes, or maybe even it is a Jackson, and you think, just let me buy time. And I can, worst case is a 90. I see the appeal, MJ. Or people just say, can I get to Sherry as a ruck? Can I wait the
three more weeks? End of round 5.
So I get it, because you're thinking with the Gorn dollars, Petrarca would look nice. Brayshaw would look nice in my team. Or Miller would look nice. Like, you get that, because
I get it.
That's an upgrade.
If you get a rookie, because Jack Hayes doesn't play this week, you get a rookie flavored donut and not a premium impact.
Best flavored.
Like, seriously, that's how easy it is. And I've said it a few times now. And this is what we were saying in the preseason, locking yourself into set and forget. Like, whilst I agree in principle of it multiple times, it's not set and forget if you trade.
That's right.
Set and forget, restructure, then upgrade, then sort of sideways trade, and do this and do that. It's not set and forget then, is it?
No.
It's like they've forgotten the forget part. Like,
that's right.
They've said, but then they've restructured and they've reallocated. Then they've jumped over here, and then there's a bit of noise over there. If you've gone that way because it's been proven before, there's no reason to change it now.
No, I think that's some good advice. Craig's got a keeper league question for you, Kane. Going to throw it out there. If you were to consider trading Merritt in a keeper league at present, who would you be targeting? Out for 6 to 8 weeks?
Yeah. It depends where you are. Like, if you're in the window, and usually if you're in the window, you think you can find some coverage. You can
for 6 straight weeks.
Something.
Yeah.
These are always hard, because Zach Merritt's a genuine gun, and he's one of these guns that I don't think is going to hit 30 and stop. Like, I think he's got a game.
He'll pick up a DPP and fire elsewhere.
He's a Pendlebury type in terms of, when it gets to the latter part of his career, he's just going to move to another role and be just
Matty Boy type.
Think about him in an Aaron. Yeah, great example. Think about him in an Aaron Hall role. Like, great kick, smart. So
gets
a lot
into
is
space.
the answer. Like, I'm going to need probably another elite premium midfielder that's at least 105 plus.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to want someone that's, got a DPP that might only hold for a year. Like, you start getting to going, do you want, Butters and someone else? Like, you're going to have to really look at your team and work out something. But Zach Merritt's still one of the best players to own in a keeper league. He's just that good.
Yeah.
But he's only 26. Come on, will you just hold him?
It's 6 weeks. Yeah.
You cop it for 6 weeks. You play some ordinary footballer for 6 weeks.
I think it's different if it's Tom Mitchell, but not if it's Zach Merritt.
Not 26, not at 120 history. No way am I trading Zach Merritt for anything. And I do own him in a keeper league.
Yeah, hold on there, Craig. Unless someone just decides to give you something absolutely ridiculous.
No, if they're offering you Petrarca and something else, like if they're offering you Petrarca straight up, maybe you go, okay. But
let's talk. But they're probably not doing that.
Yeah,
so.
But you might want to test them for drugs if they're doing that.
Yeah, that's right. They're exactly right. Probably one of our last questions we want to get in. There's a bit of a thread with Lockie, Steve, Jacob, AJS. A couple of the guys have jumped in on this one. So Patrick Cripps and Lockie Neal in AFL Fantasy. So people might be moving to them this week, although they've missed 2 price rises, Rids, whether it be from a failed mid-pricer. Is it worth still jumping on these guys now, or are we only moving to them if we believe they're going to be guys to hold for the year? Cripps and Neil in AFL Fantasy, talk to me, Rids.
Okay, so I was really surprised with Neil's ownership. So in AFL Fantasy, but I would actually go Neil out of the two, but I would be exploring around that price range and see who's dropped enough that comes into that argument as well. Because again, it feels like it's a little bit after the fact.
Yeah, they're about 100K difference too, by the way.
But the 100K in AFL Fantasy, I think, is irrelevant at times because often it's really a choice out of one or the other because they're saving that 100K to play next week.
Sure.
Because the use or lose type of thought process they have. But I said it before, Neil's 90% time on ground. He's the one that's most likely to be the keeper for the season in that format with the scoring. If it was Supercoach, it'd be a intriguing question.
That'd be a very big conversation, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not. It's AFL Fantasy. So I would go Neil and find 100,000 extra next week to use that trade somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I think Neil looks good.
He looks the part.
And he's got what's his break even? 16 in AFL Fantasy or something, isn't it, from memory?
66 break even this week in AFL Fantasy.
Yeah, so there's that feeling, though, that at any point in time with the noise coming out of North Melbourne around, we're going to target Neil, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I always worry when teams play against Hawthorn that Hawthorn believe that they can win.
Yep.
So I really do believe Hawthorn go into that contest with Carlton this week believing they can win. And they've probably got the thought process, if we stop
Cripper,
we're right in this contest.
Yeah.
So I would be very surprised.
And we haven't seen that mix as well. That's an easy one to.
Well, that's right. We haven't seen the Chera Walsh added in.
Well, the full complement. No,
the full five.
I'm going to throw a little curveball.
Oh yes.
Tom Mitchell a few years ago was doing a few tag and rolls. Do you see Tom Mitchell going to Patrick Cripps in this instance?
I could see a Warple. I could see Warple.
Warple might be more the likely.
But
yeah.
I mean, Tom Mitchell's not been a ball-winning bull. And he used to do a job at Sydney.
That's true. He did.
He's just about that big body bull that you'd want to play on a Patrick Cripps, although the height's a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, I could see.
He's smart. He's a smart footballer, isn't he?
Very,
very. Going to get to those spots. That's the thing that's I find interesting is like the spots and how they're structured up. Someone of Sam Mitchell's ilk, who's no one probably understands that centre-bout spacing and arrangement better than him.
He's an artist.
And they're not going to get – they've been some of the clearances they got against the Dogs last Thursday. I know they were up by a lot at one point and the Dogs fought back, but I'm sorry, that should have been a 10-goal game. Like they were walking it out of the middle. Like that is unsustainable. That is the thing with Cripps.
Yeah.
Kicked 5 goals straight. The contested possessions is through the roof. We've got this new complement. I think it's Neil. I think Neil is clearly their crown jewel at Brisbane. We've seen Lions start coming down with this time when we had an opportunity. But
yeah,
Cripps, I think, is just loving the fact that Kennedy's in great form. Hewitt's and now he's going to have Walsh and Chera.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like Neil's got that little bit of protection around him now, whereas when he first came in, he was very taggable.
Gets that easy kill, MJ
That's right. Well, they always look for him on that 45, don't they?
Yeah, and he's doing that outside run a lot more.
Yeah, he's getting to that half-back flank as well. Yeah, you love the half-back flank. When he gets there, you know it's going to be a big day.
Yeah, there's some Dane Swan territories of just work rate for an easy mark kick. Yeah.
And the way that Brisbane rotate through that midfield with the Rainers and the Baileys and the Lions and everyone's going through there, even Jared Berry, I think we sometimes underestimate how much of a role Jared Berry plays.
He's very important for them defensively.
He allows Neil to do what he does because he's playing his role. So, and that's why I've always been a bit iffy about whether Jared Berry would be a good pick or not this year.
Yep.
The thing is, though, he releases Neil to be that guy. So it's a great conversation. And maybe one day we'll explore it further. But Neil for me in AFL Fantasy.
Yeah, some really good thoughts. Hey, lads, an absolute bumper episode. Like we said at the top, though, these are, if not it's one of the most critical weeks of trading for coaches this year. So we did want to take that extra little bit of time to kind of drill down on that there. Hey, Kane, as always, mate, an absolute pleasure and appreciate your work.
Thank you. Thank you, MJ. Enjoyed it.
Rids, you're a superstar, my friend. Thank you for all the advice you've dropped throughout this episode too.
I like how you just made out that we actually planned to run overtime, and it wasn't the fact that I'm in isolation and I just haven't talked to anyone all day. So I'm just rambling a lot.
Human contact. Yes, bring it on. No, it's awesome, mate. We certainly wish you well. Rids will be busy on the Facebook and the Twitter handles for us, ladies and gentlemen. So send some DMs. Keep the brother busy over the next
I'm up to day 0, MJ. So day 0 of the Rona. So we've got another 7 days of this. I might
your
be very
football
active
analysis
on the
will be through the roof because you will be watching every second of it.
Yeah, ask me any question next week about stats and stuff, and I've had plenty of time to research it. I research every week for the pods. So.
No, you do not. That's awesome. Hey, mate, a pleasure. If you guys want to go and check out any of the other previous podcast episodes we've done right throughout the year or the preseason, you can go and check them out wherever you're getting this podcast episode. We also drop a special podcast early in the week for our premium tier Patreons. It's with me as I review the round of footy. That's just one of a many bunch of absolute rewards our premium tier Patreons get. If you want to become a Patreon at any level, all the links for that are at coachespanel.tv, which is also where we're dropping articles all the time, break even, some strategy stuff. And from next week, the official Ultimate Footy positions will start to move as well. Round 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. We've got the exclusive reveal for you from Ultimate Footy, and we might even convince Jimmy to jump back on a couple of podcasts with me to be able to talk you through some of those moves. So there's a lot happening for you still this season in 2022. Good luck this week. I hope your captain kills it. I hope you win Rookie Roulette, and we can't wait to chat to you all again next week. Good luck from all of us here at the Coaches Panel.